Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sunday Morning Quarterback. We are three pastors who love ministry, leadership, and sports. Fellas, the playoffs are here. Adam, what's going on in Richmond today?
I'm about an hour and a half south of Washington, D.C. I'll just leave it there.
Dad, coming from the Music City before your big cruise this week, what's happening?
All I want to say is the Cowboys are in the playoffs and Carolina ain't. That's all I got to say.
Man, what a sour day. You know, I would have loved to come on here and gloated. And Adam, you know, my dad is so petty. Would you believe that he scheduled a cruise? So he's going to be gone after the Cowboy game.
Yeah, you call it petty, I call it smart, because that's exactly where he's going to want to be when they drop. You know, it's January, and it's really become over the years maybe my favorite month of sports year round, because the Dallas Cowgirls never let America down. They always fail and they always falter. And I can almost smell it in the air. It's coming. It's coming heavy. We're going to get into that.
Let me just tell you strategy. We got it out on the last game.
Yes.
So that way in the playoffs, we're rolling. We're going to be like roses, man. Just
hey,
watch
I think
it.
Adam's watching too much First Take. He's starting to sound like a Stephen A. disciple. But anyway, all right, let's get into it. Adam, I'll start with you. Who's got the most pressure on them or team or player in the playoffs? What you think?
Do you really have to ask? I mean, all year long, from start to finish, we have to hear about the Dallas Cowboys. And every single year they fail, and they do it often very early in the playoffs or very late in the season and don't make the playoffs. Mike McCarthy, if he does not make the NFC Championship game, he's going to be looking for a job. But let me also say this, because what I saw from Dak last night, it should concern all you Cowboy fans. He was 14 of 37 for only 128 yards and threw yet another. Didn't he throw another pick six?
Yeah, he did. It was bad.
So he's
too.
throwing a pick six almost every single game. It's one thing to throw an interception and give the team the ball. It's another thing to just hand them 7 points. And, you know, this is the same Dak Prescott we've spent the last 2 years trying to figure out, is Jerry going to pay him any money? And he finally does. So I think the pressure is all on Mike, and it's all on Dak. You know, he's got to make it happen. There's no excuse. It doesn't matter if he's playing Brady, and if they were to beat Brady, he's got to go to Philly. They have to make the NFC Championship game, or the season is a wash.
Before I give you my person who I think has got the most pressure, let me give you a little Cowboys insight for any of you people out there that watch America's team, like Adam's son, who is a new fan of the Cowboys. Adam didn't even get him any Cowboys apparel.
Yeah.
Easy.
But anyway, here's the thing with Dak, man. Like, I think unless you're one of those top 5 quarterbacks, they're so consistent. Pat Mahomes, he's so talented, but he's so consistent. See, Dak is that guy where when everybody expects him to do well, he lays an egg. But whenever he gets killed, and he's getting killed this week, he is when he responds. And not yesterday, but in the previous games, whenever he'll throw a pick, he's built a little resilience. So personally, I'm not worried about the picks because he hadn't done this in years past. But you see, you got to take one with the other. Yes, he's turning the ball over and putting in harm's way, which I don't think they were getting separation yesterday, and that line was getting whooped. Their defense was playing. The running game was non-existent. But Dak played terrible. But he's resilient, and we'll see what he can do. This playoff game, I think, will determine whether he is top 10 and up or top 10 below. Like, okay, he can sneak into, top, 7, 8, 9. So we'll see. Dad, who do you think's got the most pressure this playoff?
I agree with Adam. It's Dak. But I'll move off of him. I think it's Josh Allen. I think is number 2. Josh Allen is competing for the Super Bowl. He's competing to be the best quarterback in the league. And they've had a great year. They've got a great defense. They're number 1, number 2, number 3 in all categories. And, they've had this moment that just shook not just the country, but the world. This was worldwide news. And so there's some added pressure because it almost can feel like this is just one of those years. It's all coming together. And at the end of the day, we know that they got to play football and they got to go against the Bengals. Probably will have to go against the Bengals in the next round if they win this week. And then they got to play on neutral field, Kansas City. That's a difficult task. And so anything barring a Super Bowl champion is in the same thing as the Cowboys. It's not good. And so there's pressure, and I think right now they're excited to get into the playoffs, excited to play. When it gets down to the fourth quarter, as it usually does, he's going to feel some real pressure because of all the weight that has been thrust upon him.
Yep, Adams, man, he called it from the beginning. Bill's definitely feeling pressure. Hey, what about Lamar? Do y'all think Lamar plays?
I can't get a beat on what's going on in Baltimore. I mean, you see the injury reports and they usually come out so slow, sometimes right before the game, that he's not playing. And with that contract being up in the air, I think there's a lot more going on than the public knows about up in Baltimore with Lamar and the ownership there, GM.
And if he does play, he's got pressure on him too because he wants to get paid, kind of like Dak. You want to be in that top tier, you got to deliver. You got to come through and win. And he's had great regular seasons, but every time he's gotten to the playoffs, he's laid an egg. Dad, do you think he plays?
I don't think he plays. He's not had a game in quite some time. He's going to be rusty. Going into a contract year in the playoffs, all eyes are going to be watching him. I don't know if he wants to be seen that way, having so much rust and all the expectations on him. So he may just, sit this one out and then start from the very beginning next year, maybe with a new team.
Yeah, I think Harbaugh and the upper brass have to not be happy with how he's played this one out because he started out so good. All right, let's move on to Preacher Picks. We're going to pick them. Playoffs are here. It's going to be a wild card weekend, so we're just going to go game by game. Adam, I'll start with you then, Dad, and if you have any insight, feel free to give it. If not, we can keep moving on. 49ers versus Seattle. Any shot, Adam?
No, I've got San Fran real big in that game. Pete Carroll's a decent coach, but I see that being at least a 2-touchdown score game.
Dad, anything to add?
I think it's the same thing. I think it'll be close at the beginning. The Seahawks got some pride. Interdivision, they always play tough against each other, but in the end, the muscle of San Fran will win out.
All right, Dad, I'll start with you the next one. Vikings, Giants. Any upset potential?
I think it's going to be real tough. I'm going to go Vikings. Because it's in Minnesota. I think in the end, the fans will bring them home. The Vikings really, really want to showcase that we are not just kind of one and done. And so I think they got a little chip on their shoulder as well. It's going to be a tough game because the Giants are playing good ball. But I think that chip on their shoulder, Minnesota wants to show the world who they really are. And with that, the fans, I think they'll take it.
Yep. Adam?
I agree with everything you said, and especially the part about them having home field advantage. There's certain teams in the NFL that if they get home field advantage, it means more. And I think Minnesota is one of those places. Ever since they built that new stadium, it just looks like a great place to go watch a football game. So I think that'll give them the upper hand.
Yep. All right, I'll start the next one. Bills, Dolphins. This one's going to be real interesting because the question is, does Tua play? And we saw Dolphins really challenge and have some success against him, and then Josh Allen put his cape on. So I think Tua's going to play. I think it'll be close to about the third quarter, and then I think the Bills are going to rise, and they're going to win by about 10. Adam, what says you?
I say the same thing. I think this wild card weekend, and maybe we're wrong, but I don't see a lot of upsets. I see this one being a not a close game.
Dad?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Bills in a blowout.
All right, Dad. This is going to be a good game. Jags and your Chargers.
I'm going to go the Chargers. Maybe a week ago, I would have went the Jags, but they didn't really impress me on this last game. And so they had a hard time against Tennessee. So I'm going the Chargers. I think they've got a lot of pressure too, but they've got a lot of talent. Jags are a little too young, so I'm going to go Chargers.
Adam?
I'm going to go with Jacksonville, and I think the reason is they're at home, and they're playing with house money. No one expected them to be here When on the other side, you've got with the Chargers, people have been waiting for the Chargers to do something for a few years, and their coach has been on the hot seat since the end of last season. So I think the Chargers, they're going to come in, their butts are going to be tight. All the pressure's on them. And I think Jacksonville, with that, they're going to be playing loose. They're in front of their home fans, and I think they're going to win it. I think it'll probably be a close one, though.
Hey, Joseph, let me add a little caveat to that. Mike Williams hurt his back. If he does not play, I think that's going to be something important, not just because he won't be playing, but that can go in the psyche knowing that he didn't need to play.
Yep.
And so there's some scrutiny going on right now on if all those players should have played. And so if he gets hurt and he can't play, knowing that was self-induced, I think that can play a little bit on the psyche, not just what he contributes, but even mentally.
Yeah, it's so funny. Staley won't play anybody in preseason, then he plays them in a game that doesn't count. But one stat I thought was interesting. I think it said something like, if the Chargers defense didn't give up any more than 25, Herbert was undefeated. So this is going to be if we're thinking Pat Mahomes and Allen, this is that next line, that next, Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Herbert, the Golden Boy. So that one's, and they're both gunslingers. So that one's going to be a fun one.
Hair versus hair. Hair versus hair.
Hair versus hair. Dad, I'll let you start this one because this is your team. You've been riding them. Bengals, Baltimore.
Bengals, easy.
What if Lamar plays?
Bengals. Now, to be honest with you, I think it's going to be real similar to what just happened. It was tough. It's always going to be a tough game between that division. But I think in the end, there's just too much talent. They have some special weapons. Just a little too much.
Yeah. Adam?
Yeah, I've got Cincy too. And I think if Lamar doesn't play, it will not be a close game.
Yep, I agree. All right, fellas, let's keep it moving. We'll keep this short, but just your general thoughts. Adam, I already know where we're going, but biggest disappointment of the NFL season.
Hold on a second. There's another. Are we going to do the other game later?
Oh, yeah. We're going to do the other game later.
Okay. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. So the biggest.
Oh, that game. Oh, I did. I had that in the middle, but I skipped it. I saved it for last. I've got to go back. Adam, who is?
That's a bad sign, Joseph.
I tried to get out of it. Who is going to win Dallas versus Tampa? Here you go, all the talking, but who you really think's going to win?
Yeah, so this tells me you've already resigned the fact that you guys are going to lose, and you're already thinking about next year. But
oh god,
you know what? I'm going to be a little bit nice to Dallas today, and say that this is probably going to be the most watched NFL game that isn't the Super Bowl in a long time. And I've got this game coming down to the wire. So I think Dallas will play a whole lot better than they did yesterday, which isn't saying a lot, but I think they'll put up, in the mid-20s point-wise. But this is going to come down to the wire, and Dak is going to give Tom Brady the ball with a minute 30 left. And Brady is going to do what Brady always does. He's going to methodically just pick you apart down the field. They're going to kick a field goal, and there's going to be zeros on the clock, and the Dallas Cowgirls will be going home once again.
And Adam will have his Super Bowl, and he'll live on that for the next 6 of. Dad, I'm just disappointed we couldn't play Carolina. I thought that they laid an egg. Everybody was picking them. But, Dad, you were at Tampa last year in that stadium, and you witnessed it. What is your prediction going into this game? What do you think's going to happen?
I agree with everything that Adam said. I think it's going to be a tough game. And I think that I think it's really going to. I think Dak can take that ball and score for the win. I also believe Brady can. So I think it's going to be nip and tuck. I think it could start off a little slow, but I think as the game goes on, they'll get a little warmed up, they'll get loose, and there'll be some scoring involved. But then in the fourth quarter, it'll slow down again. But I'm going Dak. I'm going Dak. Now, am I putting any money on it? Heck no, I'm not putting any money on it. So there's not a lot there. I'm leading with my heart here. But the Cowboys, I know what they can do. And if they bring their A game, they can win this game.
Well, Adam, just to give you a little bit more Cowboy perspective, we're like Israel. We get a little prosperity. Everybody starts, like Adam starts saying, the Cowboys can win. We start reading our press clippings. But we are at our best when everybody pours dirt on us and puts us in the grave. Adam, actually, if you look at our season, we lost a game, then we won 4 in a row, then we lost a game, then we won like 3 in a row, then we lost a game, we won 4 more in a row. So we're due, okay? So Dak is going to conquer his demons. We got whooped by Tampa Bay this year. We should have won last year. So here we are full circle. And this game is going to flip the script. And I don't be shocked if Dallas just comes out. Tom's leaving Tampa. He's already thinking about going to Vegas. Okay, he's already thinking about, whatever he's doing next. Don't be shocked if we come out of this game hot and everybody starts, oh, Dallas, look at him go. Or it could be close. And Dak has been playing, even though he's had picks, he's had a few game-winning drives. So I'll say 31-28. Dad, what's your score?
I like that. 31-28.
Adam,
I like that.
What do you think?
I'm going to go 31-28 Tampa Bay.
Okay. All right.
Joe, remind me, how many points did Dallas score in the season opener?
6. Hey, but you do know we are the second highest scoring offense. So when you say we scored 20, we led yesterday.
Hold on.
We've been averaging 32 a game.
How many points did you score yesterday against Washington?
Not many, but 17 games. That's a long season.
Hey, Joseph, this is a beautiful story that's unfolding. Had a tough beginning, had a tough end. We're playing that arch rival that beats us every time in Tampa, and this is that moment the flower will open.
Hey, I was mad that we lost, but then I thought, you know what? I said we're still 12-5, and Adam mocked me and laughed the first episode when I said we were going to go 12-5 at worst. He said we were going to go 8-9.
Yeah, what about that? Hey, where's my cheeseburgers? Where's my cheeseburger?
We're rolling right now.
Come on.
Hold on. So who did I pick to win the division?
Eagles.
Okay.
Who did we pick to win the division? Eagles?
Did you pick the Eagles? We got to run the tape back. Okay.
I think we did. But anyway, all right, real quick, Adam, biggest disappointment this season?
Yeah, so if any of you listeners have been with us for a few months, when we did our preseason NFL predictions, I was really high on the Denver Broncos, as was a lot of, football analysts, and people were excited about, Russ Wilson going to Denver. So I'm going to go with Denver. But here's something interesting. I was looking up and down their schedule. This fascinates me that they ended the season 5-12, I think it is. Yeah, 5-12. They had 9 one-score losses. 9. If they would have just split that in half, they'd be in the playoffs. They wouldn't have their head coach fired. So I think with as disappointing as it was, maybe the expectations were set a little too high. You've got a first-year head coach, and I'm not a Broncos fan, but I sure hope that with 9 one-score losses to fire your first-year head coach, I hope they're not making a mistake in doing that. I don't know what the guys in the locker room feel about him, but, I think they are the biggest disappointment because Russ Wilson's a future Hall of Famer, and he went to a pretty good roster, albeit in the most difficult division. But I think they probably take the cake as far as expectations before the season went.
I totally agree. Dad, who do you think?
I'm going to go a different approach. I'm going to go Green Bay Packers. I'm going to go Aaron Rodgers. Nobody saw this happening. And here's why they're the biggest disappointment. Because they started off good. Then they lost, 5 in a row. And then all of a sudden they turn it back around. They get to a point where all they have to do is win at home, get in the playoffs, very, very hot. And all they have to do is beat the Lions. At home, beat the Lions. And so they bring the hope all the way back up for it just to come crashing down again to lose for the second time to the Lions. So you have Aaron Rodgers who says, I own you, Chicago.
Yep.
This year, the Lions can tell him, we own you. So I think that's the biggest disappointment because what we know Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers play for, they play for the chip, and they didn't even make it. And they got bounced by the Lions.
Yep, that was a good one.
Where do y'all think Aaron Rodgers will be this time next year?
San Francisco, Las Vegas, go back. He could go to Vegas if they don't get Brady with Devontae.
Yeah, we know that he, like his predecessor, Brett Favre, they'll drag this out for as long as he can.
Yep.
But like I told you guys, 2 years ago when he was waiting on a contract, he should have went to San Francisco then. He would have won a ring by now, or at least be on his way to doing so. He's from California. But I could see that. I think if Brock Purdy throws maybe like 2 interceptions or maybe like a late pick six or something like that, I can't help but think if I'm Aaron Rodgers, why would I not go there? I mean,
Yep.
honestly, and particularly in this day and age of player movement across sports, no one would say, Aaron Rodgers, you're just, leaving. I think he stayed there far too long in Green Bay,
Yep.
and we'll see.
Yep, I agree. My biggest disappointment is not only the AFC West, the whole conference, because man, there was so much hype. They had so many big signings, but one of the teams in there that was the worst was the Raiders. Man, they just laid an egg. I don't think anybody saw Derek Carr being out like this. Devontae Adams. I mean, they just couldn't. Just about like Denver, they just couldn't ever get their groove going. And Josh McDaniels got some real heat, and so it will be real interesting to see who they land on as a quarterback next year. Well, hey, fellas, let's keep it moving. Big week of football, and we'll keep talking about that in the weeks to come. But we're going to shift gears to ministry and leadership. And guys, I'm going to cut my last little bit out just so we can kind of move and talk a little bit about these next two topics. But first, we want to talk about worship wars. Worship wars. This is a argument that has been going on in the church for a long time. And worship wars comes down to the simple fact of people, for whatever reason, get a little bit triggered and approach worship and music and style a little bit differently than other things in the church. And so many times people are so focused on their preference. So if you attend a contemporary church, you're going to have people that prefer more traditional. Or if you attend a traditional church, you're going to have people that are going to moan and groan about they want more contemporary. And we see this, we've seen it split churches, we've seen pastors fired because of it, we've seen relationships ended. And so let's kind of just dissect this a little bit. Adam, I'm going to start with you. What is it behind worship wars that just triggers people?
I think it's multi-layered, and a lot of it depends on the church. And maybe if we're thinking about, the person who may be complaining or upset. And the reason I say that is, a lot of it, maybe most of it historically is idolatry. And you just got to think about, people that think that you only should do hymns or you shouldn't have certain instruments. That's just a very low understanding of Christ, of his gospel, of the Bible in general. And there is a sense in which the world is always changing. The older people get, the more they want things to stay the same, because you've got to think someone, let's say, who's 60 years or older, the world has changed more and faster for them, just as far as like day-to-day stuff and the things you do, than any other generation in the history of the world. So I think there's a longing in us for something that's permanent, that stays the same, that doesn't move around and shift with the times. Not that it's always bad, but I would say that some of that then trends towards a kind of idolatry. But I say that to also, I don't want to discredit those that may see problems with something that they might say is too contemporary, because I think there's a good right motivation for some that do not like a lack of reverence in church. Mm-hmm. And whatever that might mean to a person, I'm not talking about clothing styles and things like that. I would more point to the lyrics of a song. Are we doing these chants where it's the same 7 words, 7-11 songs? And I think that is a justifiable reason to be angry, is just that, hey, there's not a reverence for the things of God, and this is not deep enough. It's not rich theologically enough. It's very shallow, superficial. And so I think you've got to kind of balance those two. And thankfully, I think we're kind of out of that era in large part. I'm not saying it doesn't exist anywhere, but I personally, at this church, our music minister does a wonderful job of blending the two together. And I've never heard one person ever complain about it being too traditional or too contemporary.
Man, you're a blessed pastor. Dad, what do you think?
I think it's like what Adam said, very multi-level, so many thoughts on it. I think a lot of it is selfishness. We like what we want. And sometimes there's no getting around that. And so with that selfishness, I don't really think it's, people don't see it. And so we really don't open our minds to the understanding of why. We just concern the what. Well, I don't like this style. And then we begin to make excuses why we don't like this style. And a lot of it is that we actually don't like that style because you like what you grew up with. And so it is very difficult. And so I think there's some selfishness. However, I think there's also a lack of biblical teaching and understanding, and not just biblical teaching, but teaching in a way so that people understand why there's a style difference and what happens when you do change a style. What is the reason that you're doing it? And so I think when leaders, if they are in the middle of change, they have to do it very carefully and very gracefully so that you can really begin to teach and spend some one-on-one time with people or go into Sunday school classes and really talk through some things. And then I think the last one is, at least for these three that I want to talk about, is people don't mind change. They just don't like the way you change them. And so sometimes they don't mind, but if you do it too quickly, then that can be a problem. So a lot of this comes back to the leader. So the leader just likes to say, hey, times have changed, put up or shut up, or whatever it may be. But I think we as leaders have to be very, very careful and do it very, very gently. Because I think most people, if you truly tell them why we're doing this and what is the end goal, because generations change, styles change for people that live in the world. And so the goal is that people can come in and feel connected by the style. I think people will understand that. And then when you do begin to change, just don't go from A to Z, but understand the context of your church, the context of your community, because sometimes you don't have to go to Z. Maybe it's just like Adam said, maybe a blended service is right where you need to be because of who's in your church. Because if you have a 50-50 split age-wise, then you don't need to go all the way to Z. And so there's a lot of wisdom in all areas. And I think if everybody would take a step back and try to be wise and allow God to speak to them on both sides, if you're a leader or if you are someone who's grown up in the church for 40 years and you've done it one way, if everybody takes a step back and breathe and talk through these things, I think it would be a lot easier than how some of these things have transpired.
And to kind of further your point, Dad, a lot of times we skip over the why behind the what. And something you and I talk about a lot is worship is more than just music. It's an approach to a generation. So, when you're an older church that's trying to reach young people and you're trying to think, okay, why won't they come in our doors, but they'll go down the road? Maybe it's because your church atmosphere is a little bit different. And a part of it might be your music style. But it's more than that. It's how you preach a message. It's how you present your building. It's how you perform a service. And so I think a lot of times the intentions are well, but churches don't do a good job giving the why behind the what and the heart of it. And so, whatever your church's mission is, say, hey, how can we best, in our context, reach our community to Jesus and each other? And what does your context look like? And, at the end of the day, we all get all bent out of shape, but it comes down to three songs that we many times unintentionally or intentionally make about us. And then, if you're one of those people out there and you just tend to get a little all huffing and puffing about the songs, you got to ask, you got to check your heart. Who you worshiping? What is your approach when you go into worship? And then are you meeting with the Lord daily? Because so many times this is an easy place for the enemy to slip in and worship war. So take the wise wisdom approach and be there for your pastor and ask questions and don't get on Facebook and comment, well, the church down there does this or that, and so too much of that going around. Well, hey, let's shift gears. That was kind of a church topic, and now we're going to talk a little bit of Old Testament characters because we are big, avid Bible readers. Dad, here's a question for you, and I've heard you preach on many. You could probably give me about 4, but who is your favorite Old Testament character and why?
They change. If you would ask me 6 months ago, I would have said Ezra. Love Ezra.
Ezra.
Right now, I'm spending some time with Daniel, and I love the fact that he purposed in his heart at a very young age. and that he pre-decided a long time ago who he wanted to be and what he was willing to bend. I like him because he had wisdom. And at the very beginning, there was only one thing that he bucked against the system with, having been conquered by Babylon. He's like, look, you want to teach me for 3 years the customs and the literature and the history of your country? Great. But there's one thing I will not bend on, and it is this. And so he pre-decided a long time ago who he was, who he's following, what I'm willing to do. And so I like that, because he was wise enough and secure enough to say, it's okay. Hey, if you want to teach me these things, I'll go with that. And I'll go and I'll be a good citizen to you. And I will do great things for this kingdom. But don't interfere with who I pray for, who I pray to, who I serve, and some of the things that are values to me. And so I like that. I think that he was a critical thinker. I'll call it biblically, but he was a critical thinker, and he really thought through some of these things. And we know that God used him in a great way in prophecy and leadership. And I'll close with this. We know that he prayed 3 times a day, and he ended up going to the lion's den. But what I love about him, what many people don't know, is he prayed that one day they would go back home. And they did. At the end of his life, they went back home, and he never did. He was never able to see home again, but he prayed for that to happen. And one of the reasons why that happened is because he was so close to the hierarchy of the different kingdoms, because there was different regime changes, and he stayed close. And so he made it really happen. God used him to make it happen, to help these kings to make good decisions, to allow that to happen for his people. He never saw it, but it didn't stop him from praying and working hard for the benefit of his people.
So if you need a book or a character you hadn't studied, probably more than not, Ezra. Check him out. Adam, who's your favorite Old Testament character?
I've got to go with Joseph. And I think one reason is that there's not many characters in the Old Testament that we get a lengthy understanding of their life like we do with Joseph. We could think of Abraham, Jacob, a handful of others, but there's not many where you see their life unfolding for years and years and years. I frequently say things like this when I'm preaching through some kind of Old Testament text. I actually said this yesterday, that when we read the Bible and we go from chapter 39 to 40, that takes us a minute. But in that, there's often years or even decades where these people are living in these situations. One thing that I love about Joseph is what I would call situational faith. We see him in all these different situations, and there's a sense in which no matter the situation, whether it's his brothers trying to basically write him off and disown him, or he's in prison, or he's being accused of things he didn't do, he's always trusting that God is in control, that God is providential over the affairs of his life. And because of that, there's just a wealth of things that we can gather from that, because we live in that day to day. We live in that grind of our emotions changing with circumstances that surround us. And Joseph has always just struck me as one of those characters that, I don't think there's anything that the scriptures say negatively about him. So he wasn't a perfect man, we need to be clear, but the parts that we see, he was a man of great integrity and great trust in God's providence and faithfulness in his life. And I think most men just love Joseph because, hey, if I'm basically I don't want to say a slave per se, but I'm a helper around my boss's kingdom and palace, you would imagine that the wife of that leader was probably very attractive. And to resist that temptation, which is the opposite of what we so often see with men throughout the Bible sexually, to be able to resist that the way that he did, I think most men really resonate with that and see that there is a path to victory. And that even as we do that, it doesn't mean the circumstances are always going to work out great for us, but to keep trusting God regardless.
Yeah, Joseph's definitely one of the best. My honorable mention is Ezekiel, just because I've been studying him the most this year and just seeing the heart that he had for the people of Israel and some of the things that he had to go to. I mean, laying over his own dung to know that the people were still going to reject. He's been one. If you're looking for one to study, jump in Ezekiel. But if I had to say my winner, it's got to be Joshua. Past few weeks, I was at a conference and we were talking about Exodus 33 and how Moses was preparing the next line up, and that was Joshua. And there was a part where everybody leaves the presence of the Holy Spirit, and Joshua stays and he lingers. And he lingers and spends time with the Spirit. And then we find that later in his life, he just goes on to live an audacious life, praying for the sun to stand still and then the walls of Jericho. And so when you look at Joshua, one of the greatest leaders in the Bible, and so many different practical applications, whether it's his boldness or his faith or his prayer life. So Joshua, I'm a big fan of, but each of those, so many different cool characteristics that we can put into practice today. So if you're out there this new year, I challenge you, maybe sometime in your reading plan, find an Old Testament character, whether it be an Esther or an Ezra or somebody that you've never studied, and glean a little bit into their life. Well, hey guys, it's been a fun one. Dad, you are about to head on vacation and a cruise, so you won't be with us. But next week, Pastor Paul Lasso is going to be joining us. So anyways, fellas, it's been real. Adam, go Cowboys.